All right, everybody, a little Saturday morning special. We are reacting to Palantir's Alex Karp give a new interview to CNBC. Some of you may have seen this interview, some of you may not. This is going to be my reaction and my raw thoughts and analysis as I've seen this interview. I saw it one time, but I didn't really get to listen fully in depth. So this is going to be my reaction to the interview. He talked about LLMs, talked about China, talked about AI, talked about the stock price, a lot of stuff he talked about. Go get something to eat, pause the video, get something to eat, get a drink, get comfortable, because I'm probably going to be here for the next, I'd say 15 to 20 minutes, and we're going to break down this interview, discuss it. If you're watching this, you probably have a lot of shares in the company like me. You want to know what your CEO thinks. He doesn't give that many interviews that often, even though in 2022, towards the end of it, he was giving a lot of interviews, but obviously he's a busy guy. So let's relax. Let's get into the interview, and let's analyze it. Now, before we get into the interview, dailypalantir.com/subscribe. Please subscribe. Newsletter every single day, Monday through Friday. It takes you like 5-6 minutes to read, and I think it's a healthy dose of core Palantir information for the day, updated every single day, Monday through Friday. Please subscribe. It would mean the world for me. All right, let's get into it.
It's going to really crush a lot of businesses because for two reasons. One, it pen tests the underlying architecture. Because if you run an algorithm or an LLM on an architecture that actually doesn't work, or is crumbly or crispy, or somehow is only built for one use case, which is a lot of it won't work. It will also crush architectures because there'll be an inability on the LLM side or on the large language model algorithm to well, how do I create a barrier between them and my trusted network and the classified and non-classified? Also, how do I have a barrier between the algorithm or large language model and decisions that are ethical, involve ethics or norms, or I have to trust this before I shut down this plant, or I can't have everyone in every single office or every single hospital bed be of one demographic. And our business is built to do that. So
Okay, so I want to take a quick little pause here and talk about why he's discussing LLM. So for those that are more technical, keep up with AI, you probably know what these are. For those that are not, basically it's a large language model. So ChatGPT revolutionized everything. I did a video on Palantir's AI Piece platform, what they're trying to do. This is what mainly Karp is going to talk about. And the reason he has to talk about LLMs is because these large language models are the future of how people will make decisions. So if I ask ChatGPT for information, I'm trusting that the large language model that has scraped the internet since 2021 is going to be able to be trained well enough to give me an answer to my question in a meaningful way. And as we've seen with the rise of ChatGPT, it's done it in a phenomenal way. Now, for the enterprise, when you're working with a hospital or a pharmaceutical company or with the government, the military, or a bank, the gold rush is going to be which company can sell the LLMs, the large language models, within these other companies in a way that allows the data of that company, that bank, the hospital, whatever it may be, to enter into the LLM, the large language model, be trained in an effective way, and then give answers to create business value, i.e. business decisions, data-driven decision-making, in a more meaningful and significant way. If ChatGPT has increased people's productivity by 10x just because they're able to do things more quickly, imagine what it would do for larger enterprises that have hundreds of thousands of employees that need to be more productive every single day. Karp's point is that AI is going to be the basis, artificial intelligence will be the basis for how enterprises are able to implement these LLMs, but the only way you implement it is if there's privacy, there's security, there's control, there's granular access over the data, there's the ability for some people to see it, some people for not to see it. All of this stuff implicates how an LLM is implicated or implemented into a business. And that's why he's having this discussion, because he knows this is the future. He knows Palantir has to hop on this train, and his argument is Palantir is built to do this in the most effective way.
The other thing about large language models and, quite frankly, algorithms is it's just really good for America because, first of all,
it's good for America because
it's while we struggle with imposing trust on it, and of course my company is in the business of that, and we have, I think, enormous advantages. If you try to do this in China or Russia, there are just too many things you're not allowed to research. The rules are going to be too stringent. They're not going to actually be able to build this. They're very far behind. The culture for building it is not exactly there. And then it's good for America because we have great allies in Europe, and we're just much quicker at adopting technologies.
We all talk about OpenAI, but obviously Google's trying to do this. Others are trying to do this. Is this kind of technology ultimately become a commodity, or is there something very specialized about it?
Well, the large language model...
Now, this is a really good question because at the end of the day, ChatGPT and the models that are trained on, they're commodities, right? They were just first to the market and they have a good user interface, so people are using them right now. But Google's been trained, right? Databricks has put out their version for like $30 that they trained. Like, this stuff is not that special. What makes it special is the data and the use cases of it, and that's what Karp's going to go into for why it matters.
Model is a lot comes down to powering the consumption. Like, so they're going to be very, very large language models. I think they are going to end up being somewhat specialized, but the real value, the part is going to be the intersection between your business logic, your business norms, or your laws and ethics, and large language models.
Now, what does that mean? Your business logic, what is the operational point of the business? So let's take a drug company. They're trying to research drugs, right? That's the business logic. Then your business norms and ethics. How does your business interpret or have a relationship towards data to be able to drive the business logic? So a pharmaceutical company probably has some restrictions on how they can research drugs. For example, you wouldn't inject a bunch of needles into human beings just to see if a drug works. There's so many regulations. Did those people consent to it? Do they have legal restrictions? Like, there's so much stuff you have to think of before you decide to do the thing that you have to do to get to your business logic. That is the business norms. And then the LLMs, which are the actual AI and technology. So Palantir's argument and Karp's argument, and I think, this is a pivotal moment for him, recognizing that over the next 5 years, the company that's going to win is the company that is able to address all three of those in a meaningful way, and that a pharmaceutical company, for example, can trust with their data, which is why the NHS trusting Palantir is so important, and I think that will set a precedent for a lot of other companies also being able to work with them.
And the people who get all those three are going to make money.
The people who get all those three are going to make money. I mean, like, that is the truth. And I don't know if Palantir will execute on the sales side of that, because that's a whole another question if they'll be able to do that. But in terms of the tech side, I do think they are going to be the ones that are going to be able to execute all three. They're not going to be the only ones, but they're going to be one of the only ones that are able to do it.
Should we be scared about the power of AI, the power of these models? Because right now, they're being used to, write poetry.
Yeah,
when they can create a transaction or do something on the battlefield, what happens?
They already are. So they are very dangerous. But the reason we have to continue down the path is, A, we have adversaries that seem to be bereft of any kind of ability to control their behavior.
Right.
And B, he's talking about Russia there with Ukraine and China there with possibly Taiwan.
The American economy is still the most important in the world. And what do we know about the American economy? It's the most adaptive.
Are we at a transformative moment? I mean, when you hear Sam Altman talk about the future of this, there are some who say this is like, the browser, back in the day. That this is one of those moments where we're going to look back in time and say, this is it. This transformed.
I think there are two moments, honestly, it sounds somewhat ill-modest of me. The war in Ukraine and large language models have fundamentally changed the world. And you cannot put this back in the box. But then there's the question is, how can you trust either? So you don't want the AI in the hands of Russia and China that we have. You don't want the LLMs. What is the trust variable? And first of all, society cares about that. It happens to make trust work. You need an ontology, you need branching, all these technical terms. It exists. But the simple layman's terms is if the LLM tells me gives me information on cancer research or how I should distribute hospital beds, is that what I actually do? And that requires a control function between the business logic,
right.
Ethics.
Now, this is also really important. When he says Ukraine and the LLMs are things you can't put back in the box, it's important to remember Russia and China are working on their own different versions of this, right? They're not going to let OpenAI, which is set to be, if it was allowed to be, like a multi-trillion-dollar company. It's probably one of the most valuable startups in the world as a private company, because of just all the value they're going to be able to create. China and Russia, they're definitely not going to allow OpenAI in their part of the world, so they're going to make their own version of it. And if they make their own version of it, and it's even slightly better than what we have in the United States, that's where Karp is very scared, because he's like, large language models are a pivotal moment. You can't put it back in the box. But the war in Ukraine and Russia's inability and China's inability to act ethically, quite frankly, in terms of their need to dictate and be authoritarian, and them having LLMs and AI within their countries and the things that they can do with it. I mean, it's just a scary thing to think about. And so this is another, sort of prophecy that Karp's been talking about over the past couple of years, which is that the world is unstable, the world is becoming more deglobalized, technology is evolving at a unbelievably rapid pace. What companies are the U.S. government and the Western world going to trust, and the commercial enterprise of the world going to trust to be able to securely do this in a way that doesn't ruin everything? And I think Palantir might be one of those companies.
What do you make of Elon Musk and some others who say there should be a 6-month pause, or there should be a pause at all in terms of the advancement of this type of technology?
If we didn't have the adversaries we'd have, I would be very in favor of pausing this technology completely, but we do. And that's why pausing is just, you can't pause it because it's a structural advantage both for LLMs and algorithms. So leaving, getting algorithms and LLMs to work in a classified context is going to take very specialized, I could explain how it works, but the fact is this is going to be a bonanza for the U.S. economy.
How concerned are you about China right now?
Everyone's very concerned. I think we were in a conversation this morning where I referenced, when we started first talking about China and America, and I was saying that this was not going to end well. That was a controversial statement. Now it's consensus. America is fairly unified in its idea that, that China and people running China are not acting in a way we can accept. And I think the consensus, if I had to guess, in China is, we're never going to get this back on the rails with America, so we should up the aggression.
When you think about, for example...
So, again, Elon Musk saying, look, I think Elon signed that letter because he realized it was going to get really bad and he wanted to pause things. Karp is realizing, look, I would be down to pause stuff to figure out how to regulate this stuff, but China's not pausing, which means we can't pause.
Well, the debate over TickTock, is that a real debate?
No, because they shouldn't be. The idea that we allow a product that is really main purpose is to degrade American intelligence while not allowing American products to work in China is just factually absurd. And it's really interesting. I mean, I'm very pro-American democracy, but we have to get better at simple decisions. This is actually a simple decision. We have one country that allows another country that's adversarial to put essentially a technology in place whose sole purpose is to make us slower and worse. And we're not allowed to do the same on the other side. But obviously this should be either we both get to do it or neither side gets to do it.
But do you think is that a national security concern?
There are lots of national security concerns. I'm saying there's a common sense element here. One country allows X, the other country doesn't. Let's just start with a very common sense. We both get to do it or neither side gets to do it.
Let's talk about your
pretty basic thoughts on TikTok. I mean, most people agree that, look, it shouldn't be the United States because China doesn't allow Facebook and Google there. So Karp pretty much agrees with that.
Business. There has been some pressure on the stock, as you know. You're coming off your first quarter where you achieved profitability on a GAAP basis. You said you expect to generate a profit for the current fiscal quarter, or for current fiscal year. Why do you think the stock has not moved more on that?
Look, there's a lot of macro factors there, but honestly, if you look, I think one of the few stocks where our market cap is higher than when we DPO'd. We can't get into our current earnings or say anything that would be new, but I'm looking at a U.S. market that's doing very, very well.
All right, so that there was the most interesting part of this interview to me, where he's like, look, I can't say anything about earnings, but the U.S. market is doing well. Now, I think they projected like 400 or 508 or 509 million in revenue first quarter. I don't know what it's going to end up being. Let's see if they sandbag, if they're able to beat it. U.S. commercial, if they can grow it really well, I mean, this year is going to be GAAP profitable, and if they can be GAAP profitable for this quarter, that would be even better. So I don't know, but let's see. We don't even have an earnings date yet. It's probably going to be sometime in May, but let's see what they do.
And over the medium and long term, I'm a very proud holder of Palantir shares.
Okay, so as you know, Jim Cramer had some choice words for the company, called it a company made up for memesters.
Yeah.
What did you think when you saw that?
He doesn't actually look at the financials because I don't spend any time talking to him. And what I really think is you take my Palantir and you take whatever anyone says about it. Let's talk about it in a year. Let's talk about it in 2 years. I'm very happy. I actually love when people attack us because it's like, great, okay, well, we'll show you our cards over the next couple of years.
What's going to happen in 2 years?
A lot of the questions that are being asked, like how does AI move from being either a danger or a trinket, are going to move to, oh, these 5 companies, these 10 companies in the sector implemented large language models, algorithms, and did it in a way that created trust, and they won the whole market.
And that's it. There we go. Now, this was really interesting at the end of the interview, what he says, because he's basically like, to the Kramer point, right? It's actually really good that Kramer doesn't like Palantir, because we all know what happens when Kramer likes a company. The argument was, look, we'll see you in a couple of years, and in a couple of years, what's going to happen is that there's going to be 5 to 10 companies that are consolidate to be able to bring LLMs to the enterprise in a safe, trusted, and secure way. The bet is Palantir will be one of those companies. The bet is that Palantir's new AIP software will be able to be sold to a lot of different enterprises, and the bet will be that Foundry, Gotham, and Apollo will scale over the next couple of years, and the macro will get better. Interest rates will come down, where an $8 stock hopefully is not an $8 stock anymore, right? That's the ultimate bet. And things can get pretty wild when we get another bull market, and things can also get pretty wild if institutions start recognizing the value of Palantir because they have consolidated. I talked publicly on the channel. I went to an investment fund here in New Jersey just a couple of weeks ago, and they got Palantir back when it was $5 a share. They were able to go to FoundryCon. They talked to Tampa Bay General Hospital, and they were like, hey, why didn't you use the alternative? And the guy at the Tampa Bay General Hospital in the little workshop was like, there is no alternative, right? So they are trying to make sure that Palantir really is a strong return for a lot of the clients that they have. They have millions of dollars in the company, and they see the long-term vision. And they're just one institution of many institutions that see the long-term vision. You've got South Korea, you've got Japan, you've got so many different subsidiaries and institutional investors across the world that see the potential of Palantir. They just got to keep executing. And they got to grow a little bit more than what they said they're going to be able to grow. And if they can do that, and Karp is right on his sort of hypothesis, and he was right in 2021 at the end when he gave that interview to Kevin Walsh of Stanford where he said shit's going to hit the fan, and then shit hit the fan, just like my camera just died right now. Let me change the camera real quick. Just like, he said shit was going to hit the fan. Shit hit the fan, and then Russia-Ukraine happened, and then he looked like a genius when he was just like, hey, bad things are going to happen. We need to have software to be able to solve this stuff. He might look like a genius again when it comes down to are LLMs going to be properly implemented, and which companies that have trust and safety over the AI is going to allow enterprises to actually trust those companies to bring those algorithms to their enterprises. So, going to be super interesting to see what happens. Thank you so much for listening, watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Subscribe to dailypalantir.com/subscribe. I'll see you in the next one. Enjoy your Sunday or Saturday. Bye.